Have you ever been told you were worthless, that you'd be nothing without someone else's help? Elise Vance heard those words every single day for 5 years. When her husband demanded a divorce, she didn't scream. She didn't fight. She did something that shocked everyone in the courtroom. She handed him the deed to their house, smiled, and walked out with nothing but her purse. Her ex thought he'd won the jackpot. But 48 hours later, a grainy cell phone video went viral, showing Elise boarding a black Sikorsky helicopter belonging to the most elusive billionaire in New York. And what happened next? Well, let's just say, revenge is a dish best served from 3,000 feet in the air. The fluorescent lights of the family courtroom in downtown Seattle hummed with a low, irritating buzz that seemed to burrow straight into Elise Vance's skull. Across the mahogany table sat Mark, her husband of 5 years, soon-to-be ex-husband. He was leaning back in his chair, checking his watch, his face a mask of bored arrogance. Next to him, his attorney, a sharp-featured woman named Linda Thorne, was shuffling papers with aggressive precision. Mr. Vance is requesting full ownership of the property at 42 Willow Creek Lane. Linda stated, her voice devoid of warmth. Given that he made the down payment and has been the primary earner for the last 2 years, we believe this is equitable. The judge, a weary-looking man named Judge Harrow, peered over his spectacles at Elise. Mrs. Vance, your counsel has argued that you paid the mortgage for the first 3 years while Mr. Vance was between opportunities. Do you contest this request? Elise looked at her hands. They were trembling slightly, not from fear, but from a rage so cold it felt like ice in her veins. She looked up at Mark. He wasn't even looking at her. He was scrolling on his phone, probably texting her Jessica, the 22-year-old intern he'd been mentoring for the last 6 months. The same intern who was now living in their guest room because Mark claimed he needed space to work on his startup. Elise's lawyer, a kind but overworked public defender named Mr. Henderson, started to stand up. Your Honor, my client has put over $80,000 into renovations alone. Elise reached out and touched Mr. Henderson's arm. It's okay, Robert. She stood up. The room went quiet. Elise was known for being soft-spoken. Mark had often called her a doormat in front of their friends, laughing it off as a joke. Judge Harrow, Elise said, her voice clear. I don't want to contest it. Mark's head snapped up. Linda Thorne blinked. Excuse me, the judge asked. He can have the house, Elise said. She reached into her bag and pulled out a heavy set of keys. She placed them gently on the table. He can have the furniture, the car, the joint savings account with the $4,000 left in it. I don't want any of it. Mark let out a scoff of disbelief, a grin spreading across his face. Serious. You're just giving up. Elise turned to look him dead in the eye. I'm not giving up, Mark. I'm cashing out. The cost of keeping that house is dealing with you, and frankly, that's too expensive for me. Mrs. Vance, the judge warned, if you agree to this now, you cannot come back later seeking assets. You will be leaving this marriage with essentially 0 assets. I understand, Your Honor, Elise said. I just want the decree signed today. Right now. Mark laughed, leaning over to whisper to his lawyer. She's finally lost it. She's going to be sleeping in her mom's basement by Friday. The gavel banged. It was done. 10 minutes later, outside the courthouse, the gray Seattle drizzle began to fall. Mark walked out, twirling the keys to the house on his finger. He stopped when he saw Elise waiting for an Uber. You know, he said, stepping close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne, a gift she had bought him last Christmas. I almost feel bad for you, Elle. Jessica and I are going to redo the kitchen, maybe knock down that wall you like so much. It's going to be a real bachelor pad. Enjoy it, Mark, Elise said, checking her phone. Really, I hope the house brings you everything you deserve. What are you going to do now? Mark sneered. Go back to waitressing at that diner. Beg your dad for a loan. You're 32, Elise. You're starting over with nothing. You're pathetic. Elise looked up from her phone. A small, sad smile played on her lips. "I'm not starting over, Mark. I'm finally starting." A black sedan pulled up to the curb. It wasn't an Uber. It was a Mercedes-Maybach S-Class, sleek and polished to a mirror shine. The back window was tinted so dark it looked like a black hole. Mark frowned. "Who is that?" The driver. A massive man in a tailored suit stepped out and opened the rear door for Elise. "Goodbye, Mark," Elise said. She slipped into the leather interior without looking back. As the car pulled away, Mark stood on the wet pavement, the keys heavy in his hand, a sudden inexplicable knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach. He shook it off. "She's probably dating some old guy for money," he told himself. "That's the only explanation." He had no idea that the man waiting inside that car wasn't just some guy, and he had no idea that the house he had just fought so hard to keep was about to become the biggest mistake of his life. Inside the Maybach, the silence was absolute, insulated from the rainy chaos of Seattle. Elise let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for 5 years. "You okay?" a deep voice asked from the shadows of the seat beside her. Elise turned. Sitting there reading a financial report on a tablet was Justin Thorne. No relation to Mark's lawyer. Justin was a name that made Wall Street tremble. At 35, Justin was the CEO of Sterling Dynamics, a global logistics and tech conglomerate. He was also devastatingly handsome, with sharp cheekbones and eyes the color of stormy seas. And until today, nobody knew he even knew Elise Vance existed. "I'm fine," Elise said, her voice trembling slightly, now that the adrenaline was fading. "It's done. He has the house." Justin set the tablet down, and he signed the waiver, the one stating he has no claim to any future assets or earnings of yours acquired after today's date. He signed it. Elise nodded. He was so busy gloating about getting the Willow Creek house, he didn't even read the fine print on the separation agreement regarding undisclosed intellectual property. Justin smiled, a rare, genuine expression that softened his hard features. "Good. Because as of 9:00 a.m. this morning, the patent was approved." Elise closed her eyes and leaned her head back against the headrest. Most people knew Elise as the quiet woman who worked part-time catering gigs and tried to keep her loud, demanding husband happy. What nobody knew, not even Mark, was that Elise was a chemical engineer by training. She had dropped out of her PhD program to support Mark's failed real estate career, but she had never stopped working in her makeshift lab in the garage when Mark wasn't around. For 3 years, she had been developing a biodegradable, high-tensile synthetic polymer intended to replace single-use plastics in medical shipping. It was a billion-dollar idea. And 6 months ago, she had met Justin Thorne. It had been purely accidental. She was catering a high-end charity gala that Mark had forced her to work at to make connections for him. Mark had gotten drunk and embarrassed himself. Elise had fled to the terrace to cry. Justin had been there hiding from the press. They talked for 3 hours, not about business but about chemistry, sustainability, and the suffocating weight of being undervalued. When Justin found out what she was working on, he didn't try to steal it. He offered to fund the final testing and legal work secretly. "We have a board meeting in New York in 6 hours, Justin said, checking his watch. "The investors want to meet the woman who just made their stock jump 12% in pre-market trading. I'm wearing a dress from Target." "Justin." Elise laughed nervously. "We have clothes waiting on the plane," he said. "Speaking of which, we're heading to the helipad." The next morning, Mark woke up in the master bedroom of the Willow Creek house. The silence was deafening. Usually Elise was up making coffee, the smell of bacon wafting through the hall. Now the kitchen was cold. He rolled over and checked his phone. He had 45 missed notifications. Must be people congratulating me on the divorce, he thought smugly. He opened Instagram. The first thing he saw was a story from his friend Gary. It was a repost of a video from a gossip site called The Seattle Scoop. The caption read, "Mystery woman boards, Sterling Dynamics chopper is that Justin Thorne's new flame." Mark frowned. He clicked the video. It was shaky footage clearly taken by someone standing near the fence of a private airfield. The wind was whipping around, but the image was clear enough. A black helicopter was spooling up its rotors, slicing the air. A man, unmistakably the billionaire Justin Thorne, was helping a woman up the steps. The woman turned her head for a split second to hold her hair back from the wind. Mark froze. He dropped the phone on his face. He scrambled to pick it up, rewinding the video. He paused it. He zoomed in. The profile, the jawline, even the beige trench coat. "Elise," he whispered. It couldn't be. Elise was broke. Elise was boring. Elise was probably eating instant noodles at her mother's house right now. Why would she be with Justin Thorne? He scrolled to the comments. User 88. Wait, isn't that the lady who used to cater at the country club? Seattle Sleuth. I recognize her. That's Elise Vance. Her husband is that loud real estate guy who tries to sell condos at every party. Crypto King Bro. Justin Thorne is worth like $40 billion. If she's with him, she just leveled up harder than anyone in history. Mark's heart began to hammer against his ribs. He dialed Elise's number. The number you have reached has been changed or disconnected. He dialed again. Same message. He jumped out of bed and ran to the garage. He needed to verify something. He threw open the door to the small workshop area Elise used to keep locked. He had demanded the key yesterday and she had given it to him. He unlocked the door and flipped on the light. The room was empty. The tables where she used to tinker with beakers and weird-smelling glues were gone. The notebooks were gone. The only thing left was a single sticky note on the wall. Mark walked over to it. In Elise's neat cursive it read, "I took out the trash. The rest of the house is yours." A panic, cold and sharp, pierced through his arrogance. He ran back into the house and turned on the TV. He switched to CNBC. The headline on the screen made his knees buckle. Breaking news, Sterling Dynamics announces revolutionary partnership with new biotech firm Vance Innovations. On the screen, standing at a podium in New York City, looking radiant in a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than Mark's car, was Elise. Beside her stood Justin Thorne, looking at her not with lust, but with immense respect. Our new polymer, Elise was saying into the microphone, her voice steady and commanding, will reduce medical waste by 40% globally. I'm proud to announce that the initial valuation of Vance Innovations stands at $50 million. Mark stared at the TV. $50 million. And because he had signed that waiver yesterday, because he had been so desperate to keep this suburban house with its leaky roof and outdated plumbing, he wasn't entitled to a single cent. Suddenly the doorbell rang. Mark stumbled to the door, dazed. He opened it. Standing there was a man in a blue jumpsuit holding a clipboard. Behind him was a large truck. "Mark Vance," the man asked. "Yeah, I'm here from the bank. We're doing an appraisal." "Appraisal for what?" "For the foreclosure," the man said, looking at his clipboard. "Foreclosure? What are you talking about?" "I own this house. Elise paid the mortgage." "Well, sir," the man said, "according to our records, there's a second lien on the house that was taken out 3 months ago. A business loan, under the name Mark Vance Real Estate Ventures." Mark went pale. He remembered. He had forged Elise's signature on a risky loan to fund a surefire investment in crypto mining that had crashed and burned. He hadn't told her. He thought he could fix it before she noticed. "The loan is in default, sir," the man said. "Since Mrs. Vance's name was removed from the deed yesterday, per the court order, you filed the bank as calling in the full debt from the sole owner. You." Mark leaned against the doorframe as the world spun. He had fought for the house. He had cheated for the house. He had thrown away a $50 million wife for the house. And now he was going to lose the house. But the drama was just beginning. Because while Mark was hitting rock bottom, Elise was flying high, but turbulence was coming. Justin Thorne had enemies, and by stepping into his world, Elise had just painted a target on her back. Mark Vance was sitting in a dark, sticky booth at a dive bar called the Rusty Anchor, nursing a cheap whiskey. It had been 3 days since the bank noticed the default. 3 days since he realized he was about to lose the house he'd destroyed his marriage for. But Mark wasn't the type to accept defeat. He was the type to flip the board game when he was losing. His phone buzzed. It was Linda Thorne, his lawyer. "I saw the news, Mark," Linda said, her voice clipped. "You didn't tell me about the second lien on the house. Or the forgery. I can't represent you in the foreclosure. It's a conflict of interest." "I don't care about the house anymore, Linda," Mark hissed, gripping the phone. "Did you see the valuation of her company, $50 million? Half of that should be mine." "Mark!" Linda sighed, sounding tired. "You signed the waiver. You waived rights to intellectual property. It's ironclad." "She made it in my garage," Mark shouted, causing a few patrons to turn their heads. "She used my electricity while I was paying the bills that makes it marital property. She defrauded me by hiding the asset value." "Proving she hid it is difficult. She can argue she didn't know the value until Justin Thorne stepped in," Linda countered. "Then I'll destroy her," Mark said, his voice dropping to a sinister whisper. "If I can't have the money, nobody will buy her product. I know things about her, Linda. I know she takes anxiety medication. I know she dropped out of grad school. I can paint a picture." Linda was silent for a moment. She was a shark, and sharks smell blood. "I'm not a defamation lawyer, Mark, but I know a guy. His name is Barry Gretsch. He specializes in public perception management. If you want to go to war, call him." Mark hung up and dialed the number Linda texted him. 24 hours later, the narrative began to shift. It started on a popular men's rights podcast called The Alpha State, hosted by a controversial shock jock named Jax Miller. Mark appeared as a guest. He didn't look like the defeated man from the courthouse. He looked polished, sad, and manipulated. "I supported her for years," Mark told the host, looking earnestly into the camera. "She was depressed. She couldn't hold down a job. I encouraged her to tinker in the garage to boost her self-esteem. I even funded the raw materials. That formula. We brainstormed it over dinner. It was our dream. And then the moment the prototype worked, she jumped into a billionaire's bed and stole our future." The host nodded sympathetically. "So you're saying Justin Thorne stole your wife and your intellectual property?" "I'm saying the timing is suspicious," Mark said darkly. "She meets a billionaire, and 2 days later she divorces me and takes the tech. You do the math." The clip went viral. By the next morning, #JustIHiredJustice for Mark was trending on Twitter. The internet, fickle and cruel, turned on Elise. In the gleaming high-rise headquarters of Sterling Dynamics in Manhattan, Elise Vance stared at her tablet. Her inbox was flooded with hate mail. People calling her a gold digger, a thief, a cheater. "He's lying," Elise whispered, tears stinging her eyes. "He didn't even know what a polymer was. He called my lab the science oven." Justin Thorne stood by the window looking out over the city. He wasn't looking at the tweets. He was looking at the stock ticker. Sterling Dynamics was down 4% since the podcast aired. "It doesn't matter if it's a lie, Elise," Justin said, turning to her. His face was grim. "It matters that the investors are getting nervous. We have a contract with Med Global to supply 10 million units of your packaging next month. If they think the patent is tied up in a legal battle, they'll pull out." "So what do we do?" Elise stood up, wiping her eyes. The sadness was gone, replaced by the same steel she'd shown in the courtroom. "Do I issue a statement?" "No," Justin said. "You don't get down in the mud with a pig. You'll just get dirty, and the pig likes it." He pressed a button on his intercom. "Send in Mr. Graves." The doors opened, and a man walked in who looked less like a lawyer and more like a retired CIA operative. He had gray hair, a scar running through his left eyebrow, and he carried no briefcase. "Elise," Justin said. "This is Lucas Graves. He's my fixer. Mark wants a war. We're going to give him one, but we aren't going to fight him on a podcast. We're going to find out who is funding him." Lucas Graves nodded at Elise. "Mark Vance is broke, Mrs. Vance. He's facing foreclosure. Yet he's staying at the Four Seasons in downtown Seattle and hired Barry Gretsch, whose retainer is $50,000. Someone is bankrolling your ex-husband. And I'm going to find out who. The person bankrolling Mark Vance was not who anyone expected. It wasn't a rival corporation. It wasn't a mysterious benefactor. It was Jessica. Or rather, it was Jessica's father. Jessica, the 22-year-old intern Mark had left Elise for, was not just a pretty face. She was Jessica Kerrigan. Her father was Bill Kerrigan, the CEO of Ether Corp, Justin Thorne's biggest competitor in the logistics industry. Mark, in his infinite self-absorption, had never asked Jessica about her family. He just assumed she was a broke student impressed by his leased BMW. He didn't know she was slumming it in an internship to annoy her controlling father. But when Mark came home crying about the foreclosure, Jessica saw an opportunity. She didn't love Mark. She thought he was pathetic. But she hated Justin Thorne. Justin had acquired her father's subsidiary 3 years ago in a hostile takeover that had humiliated her family. Jessica was currently sitting in the suite at the Four Seasons watching Mark pace back and forth. "The interview was great, baby," Jessica cooed, checking her nails. "You really look like the victim." "I just want what's mine," Mark muttered. "But Barry Gretsch is expensive. Are you sure your inheritance can cover the legal bills?" "Don't worry about the money, Marky," Jessica smiled. "Daddy sends me a healthy allowance." She stood up and walked to the bathroom, locking the door. She pulled out a burner phone. She dialed a number. "It's working," Jessica said. "Mark is distracting them with the PR nightmare. Thorne is focused on damage control. He's got his security team looking into Mark's finances." "Good," a raspy voice on the other end said. It was her father, Bill Kerrigan. "While Thorne is looking at the left hand, the right hand strikes. Did you get the access codes?" "Mark had Elise's old laptop in the garage," Jessica said. "She wiped it, but she's sentimental. She used the same password for her cloud backup as she did for their Netflix account. Vance Victory 2018. And I'm in," Jessica said, a cruel smirk playing on her lips. "I have the blueprints for the manufacturing machines, not just the formula, the machinery design. We can build the factory in Mexico and have the product on the market at half the price before she even cuts the ribbon on her New York plant." "Excellent," Kerrigan said. "Keep Mark angry. Keep him loud. We need 2 more weeks." Jessica flushed the toilet for cover and walked back out. Mark was looking at a photo of Elise on his phone, his expression a mix of hatred and regret. "You miss her?" Jessica asked, her voice sharp. "No," Mark lied. I can't believe she played me like this." "She didn't play you, Mark. She used you. And now we're going to burn her kingdom down." A week later, Elise was at the newly acquired factory in upstate New York. It was a massive facility retrofitted with gleaming chrome tanks and miles of conveyor belts. This was where Vance Innovations would change the world. She was wearing a hard hat and a white lab coat, reviewing the pressure gauges on the main reactor. "Pressure is holding steady at 400 psi, the foreman said. Elise frowned. She tapped the gauge. "It shouldn't be 400. The optimal synthesis happens at 350. Who adjusted the intake valves?" "The system is automated, ma'am," the foreman said. "It runs off the central server." Suddenly a siren began to wail. A red light strobed against the metal walls. "Warning. Temperature critical. Reactor 3. "Shut it down!" Elise screamed. "Emergency vent!" "I can't!" the foreman yelled, hammering on the control panel. "We're locked out. The system isn't responding." Elise looked at the massive steel tank in the center of the room. It was vibrating. A low hum was building into a deafening roar. If that tank ruptured, the chemical reaction would release a cloud of toxic gas that would cover a 3-mile radius. "Get everyone out," Elise ordered. "Evacuate the building now." Workers began to scramble toward the exits. Elise stayed behind, running toward the manual override wheel located at the base of the tank. It was an old-school failsafe she had insisted on installing despite the engineers calling it redundant. "Elise, go!" Justin's voice crackled over her walkie-talkie. He was in the control room overlooking the floor. "I can stop it!" she yelled back. She grabbed the iron wheel. It was hot to the touch. She gritted her teeth and pulled. It wouldn't budge. The pressure inside was jamming the valve. She could hear the metal of the tank groaning. Bolts were popping off, shooting across the room like bullets. "Elise!" Justin was running down the stairs now, ignoring his own safety protocols. "It's stuck!" she cried, tears of frustration mixing with the sweat on her face. Justin reached her. He didn't try to pull her away. He grabbed the other side of the wheel. "On 3. 1, 2, 3. Together they heaved. With a screech of tortured metal, the wheel turned. A hiss of steam erupted from the release valve, screaming like a jet engine. The pressure gauge dropped. 400, 350, 200. The vibration stopped. The siren continued to wail, but the danger was over. Elise slumped against the railing, sliding to the floor. She was shaking. Justin sat down next to her, his expensive suit covered in grease and soot. "That wasn't an accident," Elise gasped, coughing. "The parameters were changed. Someone hacked the system." Justin's face was terrifyingly calm. "I know. Lucas Graves just traced the IP address." "Who?" "It bounced through a few servers in Russia, but the origin point wasn't a hacker collective," Justin said. "It came from a residential IP address in Seattle, the Four Seasons Hotel." Elise's eyes went wide. Mark doesn't know how to code. He can barely use Excel." "No," Justin said. "But someone with him does, or someone using him does." Justin stood up and offered Elise his hand. "We have a problem, Elise. They didn't just try to steal your idea, they just tried to kill you. This isn't a lawsuit anymore. This is criminal." Back in Seattle, Mark was feeling good. Jessica had told him that something big was happening at Elise's factory that would ruin her reputation. He was ready to watch the stock crash. He was sitting in the hotel lobby waiting for Jessica to come back from a shopping trip when a man in a gray suit sat down opposite him. It was Lucas Graves. "Mr. Vance," Lucas said pleasantly. "Who are you? I'm not signing autographs," Mark sneered. "I'm sure," Lucas said. He placed a manila envelope on the table. "I'm here to offer you a deal. A lifeline." "I don't need a lifeline. I'm winning." "Are you—" Lucas tapped the envelope. "Open it." Mark hesitated, then opened the flap. Inside were photos. High-resolution photos. The first was of Jessica meeting with a man in a park. Mark recognized the man. It was the COO of EtherCorp. The second was a bank transfer receipt. $500,000 transferred from EtherCorp to an offshore account in Jessica's name. The third was a transcript of a text message conversation. "Jessica, he's such an idiot. He thinks he's fighting for his rights. I'm just using him to keep them busy while I strip the data." Unknown. "Good girl. Once we have the blueprints, cut him loose. Let him take the fall for the sabotage." Mark stared at the photos. His hands began to shake. This is fake." "Is it?" Lucas asked. "Jessica isn't a poor intern, Mark. She's Bill Kerrigan's daughter. You're a pawn. A patsy. Today someone hacked the safety protocols at Elise's factory. Attempted manslaughter. The FBI is already involved. And guess whose laptop the hack was initiated from?" Mark felt like he was going to vomit. "My laptop. She asked to use it to watch movies." "Exactly," Lucas said. "When the feds kick down your door in about an hour, they're going to find the code on your machine. You're going to prison for 20 years, Mark. Unless—" "Unless what?" Mark whispered. He was sweating profusely. "Unless you help us," Lucas said. "We don't want you. You're insignificant. We want Kerrigan." "What do I have to do?" Lucas leaned in. You have a scheduled live stream tonight with that podcast host, right, to give an update on the legal battle? Yes. You're going to go on that stream, Lucas said, and you're going to tell the truth. All of it. Live. Mark swallowed hard. He looked at the elevator where Jessica was just stepping out carrying bags of designer clothes. She spotted him and waved that dazzling fake smile plastered on her face. He looked back at the photos. The realization hit him like a physical blow. She had never loved him. Elise had loved him. Elise had supported him. Elise had given him the house even when he didn't deserve it, and he had tried to destroy her. "I'll do it," Mark said. The studio of the Alpha State podcast was dark lit only by neon signs and the glow of computer monitors. Jax Miller, the host, adjusted his headphones and gave Mark a thumbs up. "And we are live in 3, 2, 1. Jax leaned into the microphone. "We're back with Mark Vance, the man who was stripped of his dignity, his assets, and his intellectual property by a corrupt system and a cheating wife. Mark, the floor is yours. Tell the world what Elise did." Mark sat there. He looked tired. He looked older than his 33 years. He glanced at his phone. A text from Jessica read, "Stick to the script. Mention she stole the formula from your notes. I love you." Mark looked into the camera lens. He imagined Jessica watching from the hotel suite, smug and secure. He imagined Bill Kerrigan listening from his boardroom. "I want to tell you about the house." Mark began, his voice raspy. "The house she took," Jax prompted. "No," Mark said. "The house she gave me. 42 Willow Creek Lane. I fought so hard for that house. I lied for it. I bullied her for it. I thought that house was a symbol of my success." Jax looked confused. "Mark, stick to the point. The theft." "I am sticking to the point," Mark said, his voice gaining strength. "That house wasn't a trophy. It was a coffin. And the only reason I'm sitting here today is because I was too stupid to realize that the most valuable thing in that house wasn't the drywall or the granite countertops. It was the woman I treated like a servant." Jax tried to cut the feed, waving his hand at the producer. "Okay, we seem to be—" "Don't cut it!" Mark shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "You wanted the truth. Here it is. Elise Vance didn't steal anything. She is a genius. I'm a fraud. And the people funding my legal defense, the people pushing this story." Mark pulled the manila envelope Lucas Graves had given him out of his jacket pocket. He held up the photo of Jessica meeting the Ether Corp executive. "Her name isn't just Jessica," Mark said, staring down the barrel of the lens. "It's Jessica Kerrigan, daughter of Bill Kerrigan, CEO of Ether Corp. They used me. They planted malware on my laptop to sabotage Elise's factory. They tried to blow up a building to stop her stock from rising." The chat room on the live stream went nuclear. Comments were flying so fast they were a blur. In the hotel suite, Jessica screamed. She scrambled to grab her burner phone, but before she could dial her father, the door to the suite exploded inward. "FBI, get on the ground!" Heavily armed agents swarmed the room. Jessica was tackled to the carpet, the phone skittering away. Back in the studio, Mark was still talking, tears finally streaming down his face. "Elise, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You gave me the house, but you were the one who built the home, and I burned it down." Jax Miller cut the feed. The on-air light went dead. The studio door opened. 2 police officers stepped in. "Mark Vance," one officer said. Mark stood up. He held out his wrists. "That's me." He was handcuffed and led away, but for the first time in 5 years, Mark didn't look angry. He looked relieved. The visiting room at the Federal Correctional Institution in Otisville was painted a color that didn't exist in nature, a suffocating industrial beige that smelled of floor wax and stale despair. Mark Vance sat on the metal stool, his hands clasped nervously on the table. He looked different. The arrogance that had once defined his jawline was gone, replaced by a hollow, gaunt look. His hair, usually styled with expensive gel, was limp and turning prematurely gray at the temples. He wore a khaki jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too big. He checked the clock on the wall. She was 5 minutes late. He didn't think she would come at all. Then the heavy steel door buzzed and swung open. The room seemed to tilt. Elise walked in, and for a moment Mark forgot how to breathe. She wasn't wearing the stained apron she used to wear when she made him dinner. She wasn't wearing the sensible cardigans she bought on clearance. She was wearing a trench coat that looked like it was spun from cashmere and moonlight cinched at the waist to reveal a silhouette of absolute power. Her hair was cut into a sharp chic bob that framed her face, and her eyes were hidden behind oversized designer sunglasses. She sat down opposite him. The guard nodded at her with a level of respect Mark had never received in his life. Elise took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were clear, calm, and terrifyingly indifferent. "Hello, Mark," she said. "Elle?" Mark croaked. He cleared his throat. "Elise, you look incredible." "I have 10 minutes, she said, checking a watch that cost more than the house they had fought over. "The helicopter is waiting on the tarmac." "Right. The helicopter." Mark let out a bitter, jagged laugh. "I saw the news in the rec room. You're buying Ether Corp. You're buying his company, Kerrigan's company." "We're acquiring their assets," Elise corrected him gently. "The brand was toxic. We're dissolving the name. Ether Corp won't exist by Monday morning." Mark looked down at his hands. "I'm sorry, Elle. I know I said it on the stream, but I need you to know. I'm sorry about the house. I'm sorry about Jessica. I was weak." Elise looked at him, studying him like a specimen under a microscope. "You weren't weak, Mark. You were greedy. There's a difference." She reached into her Hermes bag. Mark flinched as if expecting a weapon. Instead, she pulled out a thick folded document and slid it across the metal table. Mark frowned. He picked it up. It was a property deed. "What is this?" "It's the deed to 42 Willow Creek Lane," Elise said. Mark's eyes widened. Hope, sudden and desperate, flared in his chest. You bought it back." "For me, Elise, you didn't have to read the addendum on page 4, Mark." Mark flipped the pages with trembling fingers. He scanned the legal jargon until his eyes landed on the stamp at the bottom. "Foreclosed. Auction pending. Salvage value only." "I didn't buy it back," Elise said, her voice devoid of malice. "The bank sent this to me by mistake because my name was still on an old insurance file. I'm giving it to you because it belongs to you. It's exactly what you fought for. It's a piece of paper that says you own a pile of debt and a structure that has been stripped of its copper wiring by squatters." Mark stared at the paper. The house, the symbol of his status. It was worthless. "Why are you here, Elise?" Mark whispered, tears pricking his eyes. "If you hate me, why come?" Elise stood up. She buttoned her coat. "I don't hate you, Mark. I don't feel anything for you. I came here because I wanted to make sure that the version of me that lived in that house, the version of me that believed she was worthless, stayed here with you." She turned toward the door. "Elise," Mark called out, his voice cracking. Do you love him, Thorne?" Elise stopped. She didn't look back. "He listens to me when I speak about chemistry, Mark. He doesn't ask me to make him a sandwich while I'm building an empire. That's enough for me." The buzzer sounded. Elise walked out into the bright, blinding sunlight of the free world, leaving Mark Vance alone in the beige room with the deed to a ruin. 3 hours later, Elise was walking through the glass atrium of the Ether Corp headquarters in Chicago. This was the Lion's Den. For 20 years, this building had been the fortress of Bill Kerrigan, a monument to corporate aggression and bullying. Today, the employees stood in silent rows as she passed. They whispered behind their hands. They knew who she was. She was the woman who had survived their former CEO's assassination attempt. She was the woman who had invented the polymer that made their entire product line obsolete. Justin Thorne walked beside her, but he hung back a half step. This was deliberate. He was letting the world see that she was the lead. They entered the boardroom on the top floor. The panoramic view of Lake Michigan was breathtaking, but the atmosphere inside was suffocating. Sitting around the massive oval table were the remnants of the ether board, 6 older men in expensive suits who looked like they had just swallowed lemons. At the head of the table sat the interim CEO, a man named Marcus Sterling, no relation to Justin, who was known for being a ruthless negotiator. "Mrs. Vance," Marcus said, not standing up. "Mr. Thorne, we were expecting you earlier." "I had to make a stop," Elise said breezily. She didn't take the seat offered to her at the side. She walked to the head of the table. Marcus blinked. "Excuse me, Mrs. Vance, I believe I'm chairing this meeting." "Not anymore," Elise said. She placed a tablet on the table and projected a hologram into the center of the room. It was a 3D rendering of a molecular structure. "This," Elise said, pointing to the hologram, "is the chemical bond of your current shipping plastic. It degrades in 400 years. It releases toxins when heated. It is expensive, inefficient, and frankly embarrassing." She swiped the air, and the image changed. "This is Vance Polymer 6. It degrades in 6 weeks. It is stronger than steel mesh, and as of this morning, Vance Innovations has secured exclusive contracts with Amazon FedEx and the United States military." The room went deadly silent. "Your stock is trading at $4 a share," Elise continued, her voice hard as diamond. "You are bleeding cash. You have lawsuits pending in 3 countries due to Kerrigan's actions. You don't have a company, gentlemen. You have a sinking ship." Marcus Sterling straightened his tie. "We still have infrastructure, factories, a fleet of trucks. We aren't going to sell for the lowball offer you sent over." "It wasn't a lowball offer." Justin spoke up for the first time, leaning against the wall, looking bored. "It was a mercy killing." Elise leaned over the table, placing her hands flat on the polished wood. She looked Marcus dead in the eye. "Here is the new deal," Elise said. "I am cutting the offer by 10%. "What?" Marcus sputtered. "You can't." "I can," Elise said. "And if you don't sign it in the next 5 minutes, I will walk out of here. I will build my own factories. It will take me 6 months longer, but in 1 year Ether Corp will be bankrupt and your shares will be worth less than the paper they are printed on. You will be remembered as the board that let the company die because of ego." She checked her watch again. 4 minutes 30 seconds. The board members exchanged panicked glances. They looked at the hologram of the superior product. They looked at the falling stock ticker on the wall screen. One of the board members, a man with white hair, sighed and uncapped his pen. "Give me the papers." Marcus stared at him. "Johnson, you can't be serious." "She's right, Marcus," Johnson muttered. "It's over. Kerrigan killed us. She's the only way out." One by one they signed. When the final signature was inked, Marcus Sterling glared at Elise. "You're a cold woman, Mrs. Vance." Elise picked up the documents. She smiled, and it was the sharpest, most dangerous thing in the room. "I'm a businesswoman, Mr. Sterling. The woman you're thinking of, the nice one. She was fired for incompetence 5 years ago." She turned and walked out, the click of her heels sounding like gunshots in the silent room. The Sikorsky S-76 helicopter banked sharply, leaving the smog of the city behind as it headed toward the private airfield where the Gulfstream was waiting to take them to Monaco. Once they were at cruising altitude, the tension that had held Elise's spine straight finally snapped. She let out a long exhale and slumped back into the leather seat. Justin was there instantly. He didn't say a word. He just opened a bottle of sparkling water and handed it to her. "We did it," Elise whispered, looking at the bubbles in the glass. "It's actually done." "You did it," Justin corrected. "I just provided the legal team, that show in the boardroom. That was all you. I've never seen Marcus Sterling look so small." Elise looked out the window at the clouds. "I was terrified." "You didn't look it." "I was thinking about the waitress," Elise said softly. "The waitress I was 6 months ago. The one who was afraid to ask for a raise. The one who thought if she just cleaned the house better, her husband would love her." Justin reached across the aisle and took her hand. His grip was warm solid. "That waitress is gone, Elise." "No." Elise shook her head. She turned to look at him, her eyes fierce. "I don't want her to be gone. I want to remember her. Because she's the one who stayed up until 300 a.m. mixing chemicals in a garage. She's the one who kept going when everyone told her she was stupid. I owe her everything." Justin smiled, a look of profound admiration crossing his face. "Then let's toast to her." They landed in Nice and took a secondary chopper to the yacht anchored off the coast of Monaco. The Vance Sterling I was a floating palace, 200 feet of white steel and glass. The party was already in full swing. Investors, celebrities, and royalty were mingling on the upper deck. The sun was setting, painting the Mediterranean sky in bruised purples and fiery oranges. As Elise stepped onto the deck, the music lowered. A hush fell over the crowd. She wore a gown of midnight blue silk that rippled like water when she moved. Around her neck was a simple diamond pendant, the first thing she had bought with her own money from the company dividends. She moved through the crowd, shaking hands, accepting congratulations. She heard snippets of conversation as she passed. "That's her, the Iron Lady of Logistics. I heard she destroyed Bill Kerrigan single-handedly. She's more beautiful in person." She finally reached the bow of the ship where the railing looked out over the open ocean. Justin found her there a moment later holding 2 flutes of vintage champagne. "Hiding," he teased. "Just breathing," she said. He stood beside her, their shoulders touching. "So what's next?" "We've conquered the market. We've vanquished the enemies. What does Elise Vance do tomorrow?" Elise took a sip of champagne. The bubbles tasted like victory. "Tomorrow," she mused. "Tomorrow I start working on the water purification project. The polymer was just the beginning, Justin. I have ideas for desalination filters that could change agriculture in drought zones." Justin laughed, shaking his head in disbelief. "Of course you do. Most people would buy an island and retire." "I'm not most people," Elise said. She turned to face him. The sun was dipping below the horizon, casting a golden glow on his face. "And neither are you. You risked your company for me." "Why?" Justin's expression turned serious. The playful billionaire facade dropped. "Because I saw someone who was burning with potential, and the world was trying to smother her," he said quietly. "And because I knew that if I helped you fly, you'd take me somewhere I couldn't go alone." He reached into his pocket. For a second, Elise thought he might pull out a ring. Her heart hammered. But he pulled out a small velvet box. Inside wasn't a diamond engagement ring. It was a lapel pin. It was made of platinum, shaped like a simple chemical beaker. "I had the jeweler make this," Justin said. "It's not a proposal. Not yet. I know you have a company to run. But it's a promise, a partnership pin, equal stakes, equal power, forever." Elise took the pin. Her fingers brushed his. It was better than a ring. A ring was a request. This was a recognition. "Partners," she whispered. She pinned it to his tuxedo lapel. "But I'm the majority shareholder." "Obviously," Justin grinned. Suddenly a flash of light erupted from the water. A boat filled with paparazzi had maneuvered close to the yacht. "Ms. Vance, Mr. Thorne over here. Give us a smile." Justin moved to block them, his protective instinct flaring. "I'll have security move them." "No," Elise said. She stepped forward out of Justin's shadow. She walked to the railing. The wind caught her hair. She didn't shrink. She didn't hide. She looked directly into the lenses of the cameras. She raised her glass high. "Let them take the picture," she said, her voice carrying over the water. "Let Mark see it in his cell. Let Jessica see it in her empty apartment. Let the whole world see it." "See what?" Justin asked, stepping up beside her. Elise smiled, and it was a smile that could launch 1,000 fleets. "See what happens when you underestimate the woman who holds the keys." The camera shutters clicked furiously, a storm of flashes capturing the moment. Elise Vance, the woman who gave away a house to find a kingdom, stood against the backdrop of the infinite sea, finally completely free. And that, my friends, is why you never underestimate someone who is willing to walk away with nothing. Mark Vance fought for a pile of bricks and lost his freedom. Elise Vance gave up the bricks and built an empire. It brings up a crazy question. If you were in Elise's shoes, would you have forgiven Mark after his confession or let him rot? I want to see your answers in the comments below. Let's get a debate going. If you enjoyed this story of revenge, justice, and billionaire romance, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next crazy true story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.